So, hi everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of the Story Tinker Purple Hyacinth podcast, Lonely Lullaby. And today we have Firedancer, Hadzy, and Fwoot.
Hello.
Hi.
Awesome. So where we left off last episode was after Lauren, Kym, and Will discovered Harvey's dead body, and they were talking to the rest of the police department about it, and Kym has run off. So Firedancer, if you want to start us off.
Right. So starts off by we have Lauren trying to reach out to Kym, Kym kind of running away, and then Lauren calls out Kym. She's about to run after her, and then Hermann stops her saying, "Officer Sinclair, I need you to go to the interrogation room and give your report to March on what happened this morning." And then you can see Lauren kind of clenching her teeth, trying not to lose it, and just like, can it wait?
I found it interesting. Like, I don't see that she's mouths off to Hermann often. So I think, like, you know, she really, really wants to go after Kym to the extent that she's willing to like be rude to her commanding officer.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, you can tell she does not want to do what he says right now, and that is one of the few times it's visible.
It kind of shows how Lauren like prioritizes her friends rather than her work, or how she feels other than what she's supposed to actually do.
Yeah, and I agree. And then Hermann says, well, the other two already stormed off. The other two meaning Kym and Will. So we'll have to start with you. Hermann being as unsympathetic as ever. You can see she just kind of like looks away, and he just says, focus, officer. Lieutenant Hawks went after her. Liddell is fine.
Actually, that was all Hermann saying that, which, speaking of it, I think that was actually pretty sympathetic of him. I'm surprised. Like, I totally forgot that he said this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like, he actually notices that she's distraught. Wow, oh my God, I can't believe Hermann said this. Now I'm shocked.
Hermann has feelings.
And we only have like one panel of Hermann, like where we really see his expression. But for Hermann, I would say, especially with this dialogue, he seems pretty shaken too. Like he is kind of a jerk, but I think that losing an officer does hit hard for him, especially someone who is under his watch.
Yeah.
And I think that also kind of does play into who he is as a character, because like, this is just my theory, but I think that like Hermann specifically will take his officers out of dangerous positions if it means protecting their safety. And I think, I don't know if we know this yet, but like Lauren was demoted. Yeah, we know this.
Yeah.
And I think he did that out of like to protect her, because if Lauren wasn't demoted, she would probably be dead by now, like actually dead.
Yeah.
Oh,
When looking at Hermann with a broader perspective, he's how to say this? I'm not saying that he's like a good person, but he's like one of those decent people out there who would actually sometimes do their job. In this case, while Hermann's priority is to put Kym, to know that Kym is one of his officers are safe, and the other priority is to figure out what exactly happened to Harvey. And since it's also early in the morning, they have to do it quick, or else we don't want more people like Kym running outside of the precinct. So in a sense, he's already pretty logical at this point, since two people, like out of three witnesses, two people are gone. He has to interview or conduct an interview for the last remaining witness.
Yeah. Hermann, I think, like, although Lauren wanted to comfort Kym, I think Hermann did make the right choice in having her stay back, because you know, like Hadzy said, they were like the three people who found it, and they are going to be suspected if they don't figure out what happened. So he probably doesn't want them to be suspects of, you know, Harvey's murder. And so the sooner he can get eyewitness reports from them, like this, the better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because even though it is a little bit kind of, at least in Lauren's eyes, just like unfeeling to say just like, no, you go to the interview now, it doesn't wait. I do agree that's the right decision, because as shaken as all of them are, it needs to get done. They need to know what happened.
Yeah, and especially it's because it's most likely murder, because there's no way that was an accidental death.
Oh,
And yeah, so it also brings the safety to the rest of the officers and staff working at the APD.
Right, 'cause they were murdered in
yeah.
the office. So yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that's maybe why Hermann may seem a little bit shaken here, because like it's not just that an officer is dead, it's that an officer is dead in the precinct. So it just means someone got through security, someone murdered, and they got away with it. And that's scary.
One of my favorite things to think about whenever I want to feel bad for Hermann is I just think about how many funerals this man has attended, about officers who like worked for him at some point. Just the guilt that he was supposed to like protect them and he couldn't. So
yeah, I feel like maybe Hermann, I don't want to say he's a terrible person, because I don't believe he's a terrible person. I think he is a good person. Just he's turned into a very bitter person.
same.
He sort of prioritizes the act of delivering justice first, rather than putting his emotions first, which is really important for an officer, especially an artist, because of their motto that behind the mask, when they put on the mask, they're not like they're individual, they're like representing justice in a sense. And because he became captain for a reason, I think, and he's clearly putting his job first. He's acting because of his job, and he's letting his emotions act upon his job, his morals, which are the APD mottos and missions.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think he prioritizes the logical side instead of the emotional side. But I think his downfall is just his pride.
Yeah, he, like Hadzy said, he is trying to live up to APD ideals, and I think that does stop him in some cases, like from actually doing what is best. But I think in moments like these, he is trying to look out for his officers while still being complicit in what his job requires him to do. And frankly, like on Fire's idea of that Hermann is a good person, just who turned really bitter. This is again a theory of mine, but we know that Hermann was stood up for a promotion. And personally, I think that a good twist would be that Hermann was actually deserving of that promotion, but he wasn't loyal to the Phantom Scythe, which is why he didn't get it. So instead, the Phantom Scythe, who had like infiltrated the APD, they had someone hire someone who was actually loyal or could be puppeted by the Phantom Scythe, so they could get like even deeper into the police with the chief of police.
That's very interesting.
You know what I would find interesting? If I will say this really fast, but I feel like it would be interesting if Hermann kind of had like a Severus Snape kind of arc, where it's like he's horrible to the main character, which like he has a bias against Lauren. We all see it. And regardless of what she's done, which I do say her demotion was deserved, but like the bias he has against her, it's too much. But like he's horrible to the main character, but if what Fwoot says is kind of like on the mark, I feel like maybe it could go to the route of he's trying to look out for her in his own kind of like very prideful way.
Yeah.
It could be interesting.
Like when it comes to like when I think of Hermann, I don't necessarily think that he's like thinking as like a biased person only against Lauren. Well, maybe like part of her actions were significant because they did like indeed damage the reputation of the APD itself, like entirely. But in a sense, what she did to get her demotion was definitely like one, not following the APD morals. And she was really acting on her like emotions. She's using her ability, but nobody else knows that she has this ability. So, I mean, to some other person who looks at Lauren doing whatever she did to get her demotion, it will make sense.
Yeah.
Because nobody else would ever know why Lauren would act in that certain way.
Yeah, true. Because from an outsider's perspective, it just looks like Lauren, because she admits this herself, like she let the mask slip. She let it slip and her own agenda came out and it overrode her logic.
And also, I think that Hermann is playing a game of politics right now.
Yeah.
Because although something like what Lauren did shouldn't be as like we don't really know what she did, but we have some sort of an idea because it's been hinted at. But whatever she did, it ruined or damaged the reputation of the police, and that was something that Hermann really couldn't risk. And so in a calculated move, he had her demoted. And I think that was because you can't have people damaging the reputation of the police when you're in a war against a terrorist group. You want the police to inspire confidence and bravery, and you want people to believe in the police. But if people don't believe in the police, then they're not going to support the police, and the police really need all the help they can get to take down the Phantom side.
And especially when the police are right now in a really, really bad position, because like around in like episode 9 or 10, we already know that the citizens are really unhappy with the police. Because the PS has been there for like 10 years. It's been 10 years since Allendale, and there's no leads to find like the origins of the scythe. So the people are already unhappy, which makes like the APD's political stance pretty low. And by keeping Lauren, if he didn't demote Lauren at that point, then people are just might have gotten angrier, because in a sense they're trying to, how to say, protect their own officers that did from the perspective of an outsider, something wrong and something that was completely out of the line in their duty.
Yeah.
Oh, now that Hermann has gotten a wonderful defense, we can go on.
Yeah, so anyway, so after he says, Lieutenant Hawks went after her, Liddell is fine. You can see Lauren kind of like trying to keep her cool. She's like gripping her fist. And then she says, yes, sir, of course, I'll do it. With like a very dark look on her face. So she's clearly not happy about it, but she has to do what he says. And then March is kind of just like, you know the drill. I need to ask you a couple questions. If you saw anything abnormal this morning, any clues, etc., I'll talk to Hawks and Liddell when they get back. And then we get the intro. And then it cuts to Kym running outside of the police station, very panicked, very, very much distraught. And then Will's calling after her saying, Kym, and then she's not hearing any of it. Like she's like, how do I put this? Like her eyes are just blanked. She's not hearing anything he's saying. It's all kind of
like
like
she's running out directly into the cold. Looks like it's snowing, and she's
yeah.
not even regarding the weather.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then this is just gonna. Yeah, she's still running, and then he realizes she can't. He says she can't hear me, and then he starts running faster. And then it cuts to her slowing down, and then she stops when she hears music. And then she reaches out to the window, and it looks like just kind of like a pawn shop of sorts, maybe some sort of shop. And then Will rounds the corner. He's about to call for her, and then he stops. And then you see her just kind of standing by the window. Her eyes are closed and just kind of looks like calm on her face. And then I believe Hadzy, it's your turn.
Okay. So Will is looking at Kym touching the window, or she's like sort of like casting her palm, hovering her palm over like through the glass that's in front of this music box, and it's playing this very beautiful music. And Will sees this different side of Kym compared to when she's at the office and what he's normally used to. And he kind of just stares at her while she is really in her moment, being alone in front of that music box. The music box stops, and she turns around to face the other side of the street, and Will realize how cold it is, and he calls out Kym. And Kym notices that Will came after her and asks, "What are you doing here?" And Will says, "Just checking if you're okay." And Kym says, "Well, that's surprising. I thought you despised me." And Will says, "I do. I'm just." And he says that he's fulfilling his duty as lieutenant to make sure his subordinates are all right. And
if I can pause there for a second, that to me, the fact that he, his immediate reaction was like, "Oh, I do hate you," but then he pauses and he kind of realizes that like he went after her because he does care about her, but then he just comes up with some, acceptable excuse for why he ran after her. "Oh, I'm just fulfilling my duty as lieutenant. I would do this for anybody, not because of any special feelings for you."
Or kind of, I thought like his response was like that because at this pace, usually their banter would go say, "Yeah, I despise you." But I thought that because Will saw Kym in this distraught space, he rephrased his way of talking in a sense to also just give her a sense of security after what happened.
Mm-hmm. I love how it always takes someone dying for any of the characters in Purple Hyacinth to get remotely close to one another.
Again, these characters,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, therapy.
Like, I mean,
group therapy.
Harvey may be like, dead in a closet, but at least Kiwi had a good bonding moment.
Listen, it was all part of the plan.
Next panel, Kym says, "Don't worry too much. I was just a little surprised. That's all. I'll be okay." And well, Kym is clearly not okay. Like she's probably still not recovered from what she saw, whatever she saw, or what she saw when they found Harvey in that closet. And Will says, "Well, you don't normally react like that, and usually you would make awful jokes at crime scenes, like the early episodes, with the drop dead gorgeous jokes." And Will says, but today you reacted like a normal person. And he said, and weirdly, that was scarier. And Kym laughs and she says she laughs because she knows that Will cares for her. And she's like, haha, well, but it's just that, and she talks about, she says, when I was little, I used to see cops like some sort of superheroes, but over time I realized how human they were. Their clock stops sometimes just like everybody else.
Yeah, so the fact that she uses that time, like we know that she has a broken pocket watch that she keeps with her. So her language, their clock stops like everyone else. It's already, and like, why did she see cops when she was little? Like, what made her think of cops? Like, yeah, a lot of people think of cops. You know, a lot of little kids want to be cops, but maybe there was a cop in her life. And that's what she was reminded of.
So when she's talking about this, I think what she is she's referencing, so like, this is like a real life example, but when I was like a little girl, I was like, oh my God, superheroes are probably immortal because they're so strong. They always defeat the bad guys. Everybody likes them. But then Kym says, I realized how human they were and their clock stops sometimes. And this is like the harsh reality slap that you get when you're like, when you start like reading Batman or something, I don't know. But Kym recognized at some point in her life that not everybody is like a superhero. To even if they are like considered to be a superhero, they're not immortal. They're not extremely strong. They're definitely like other people. They're like the same people as us, like as her, and their clock stops sometimes. They're eventually, because every human is mortal, everybody's clock is gonna, stop sometime. Either like in the future, near future, we never know when it's gonna stop.
Yeah, Kym is having a reckoning of her mortality in this scene. I think she has detached herself relatively well from her job and like what the consequences and things that she'll see in her job are, because being a policeman carries, or a policewoman in this case, carries a lot of weight on it. And it's easy to detach yourself, especially if it relates to some sort of trauma, or if you're trying to avoid the emotional reckoning that happens when when people die. But people dying is inevitable in this field of work, and again, you never really think it's going to happen until it happens to you, and it doesn't really affect you until it happens to you.
And in a sense, especially because they are in a world with a big terrorist organization on the loose that's getting more power each day and stronger, you really never know when, like, you're like, if you're in that line, like you're literally in the front lines, if you're like a patrol officers. And I think you don't really acknowledge that fact until you reach a certain point, like right now. Like, I highly doubt that people, like most people in the APD, would like think that somebody would die, because we have those little moments in the office in the really early episodes. Everybody's acting so carefree, bubbly, everybody's friendly. But I find it hard to believe that some people, like most people, like wouldn't think of what's going to happen the next day, what's going to happen when you get home, where you're going to find out. Because, I mean, ignorance is a bliss sometimes, but you have to acknowledge that in order to do it. And Kym right now is really showing like a great example of somebody acknowledging that really anything can happen to you in life.
Yeah. And I think Kym as a person, in her line of work, it's very easy to get desensitized to tragedy or death. I think Kym just, the way she detaches herself is just humor. So she'll make jokes about it and pretend it's easier than it is. But then this sort of thing, it's a shock to the system, because you don't think your coworker is going to be the one that you have to clean up their body. You never think that until it happens.
And she was, oh, you could go first.
Oh, no, sorry. Oh, okay. I was going to say that we just saw in a few episodes before this how easily Kym just pulled a gun out on someone. So being desensitized is definitely what Kym has gone through if she's just so easily like just exerting violence or threatening violence on someone who only has a knife. Like, that person brought a knife to a gunfight. And then also in the earlier episodes, as we saw, she just completely couldn't care or didn't show any signs of caring about the dead person. And instead she used humor to cover up likely how she was feeling. And she probably uses humor to cope with a lot of things. And she just uses it as a form of escapism to what she is actually doing.
Yeah. I want to commend Will here, because Will, just like we expected him to be, is a fantastic listener, and he really focuses in on Kym. The fact that also obviously he recognized that she was distraught and not acting, usual, but he also listens very nicely.
Oh, yeah.
Not surprised. Will's a great guy.
Oh yeah, I think Will's a person. I feel like he's a great listener.
And to an extent, what Kym is saying is definitely true. It's the harsh reality of staying in a job in a city with terrorists. And Kym was probably joking with Harvey like the day before. She was probably like talking to him like normal. They were in the office doing fun stuff, daily stuff. And suddenly the next day, he's just dead in the closet. And she was the one who actually found his body, which is terrible. And it gives, again, I think I use this word too much, but it's like a reality slap to the face and to your soul, that really there's always a limit to one's happiness.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I find the next line she says down here, we'll get to that in a second, but I just find the next line that she says is so sad. Yeah.
Okay, so going to the next panel, it says, now when I recognize that same look in people's eyes, I wonder if they'll ever realize this, that superheroes die too.
And I think this line kind of comes from, a moment of growing up, because, when we're kids, we're raised as fairy tales and the heroes always win in the end, and they always live, they get the happily ever after. And, the bad people die and they're defeated. But that's not necessarily the reality that Kym is living right now, because she had her adolescence and she had her teenhood while the Phantom Scythe was operating, and when the Phantom Scythe sort of just exploded, literally, but with Allendale. But the whole superheroes die too is the realization of that good people aren't immune to these things. And it's the moment where something that we thought was a constant in our childhood really isn't a constant anymore.
Yeah. And like the part where she says, I wonder if people will ever realize that superheroes die too. it's kind of, since she was seemingly, it's been hinted that she had a loss at a young age, it's seemingly like she got hit in the face with reality so young. She sees everyone else with rose-colored like she sees everyone else has rose-colored glasses on. Meanwhile, like, she doesn't have it anymore. It was already ripped from her.
I mean, this is already a plank in real life at this point. As humans, we want to believe that there's like two exact sides, and the one that's morally bad and the one that's morally good always gets rewarded, and the one that's morally bad always gets punished. It's like what we're taught from a young age: be good because you will be rewarded, be bad and you get punishments, you go to jail. If you're good, you can go get a job, you can have a family, etc. It's already into our brains, and these theories, these claims are already supported by the mass media we have, of the good guy always winning against the bad guy. And it's hard to break out of that reality, especially since the concept's been there for like a long time. It's been like being familiarized since like everybody's a child. We want to believe that everything good has good consequence, good things that happen to you, and bad things have bad consequences. And usually we're kind of broken from this spell from around like third, fourth, fifth grade, when we start really learning about the world around us. But in Kym's case, it kind of looks like, yeah, at a pretty young age, she has to, one, acknowledge that fact. And despite knowing that like the world may not be like perfect, because we have these justice systems and these like moral beliefs that we believe so strongly in, it's hard for like most people to believe that the bad guy sometimes wins. The good guys don't always win. And really, everybody's the same, regardless if you're bad or good, whatever. It really doesn't matter, because everybody's, in the end, like, everybody's the same.
Yeah, and it's kind of, after a certain point, like you said, you want to think it's just two sides and it's a distinct line, but it's very blurry. And once you realize that it's not be good and you'll be rewarded, it's try to be good and hope that you're rewarded.
And okay, I think we should probably also mention how Kym and Will are police and how that does relate to the real world in this whole talk of morality. Because at least in America, there is a lot of people who say that, oh, there are good apples and bad apples, and it's all a matter of getting rid of the bad apples. But like Hadzy said, you really can't tell who is a good apple and who's a bad apple. And a lot of times, police unions and the system end up silencing the police who are actually trying to help their communities. And so if Ardhalas's police system is anything like that, then it is important to take that into account, because there are people because we see people who try to do the right thing, but they often end up doing something that is kind of only harmful to others, and the consequences of their actions can be life-threatening.
Yes. And when just looking at what the police does that, and okay, so when we look at police just from their actions, what they do, you could if you just put it simply, they can have guns, they can shoot if they want to, they lock people up behind bars, they are presumably serving justice, but sometimes it's a mistake. Sometimes the wrong person gets behind the bars. And when you just look at these actions, it really makes you question if this is like the actual good way of delivering justice. of determining what's good and what's bad. And as humans, we don't even know the distinction of what's good and bad, because we're just really doing it's like we're like a herd. We're doing what majority thinks is right, even if that right or good is not like right at all or not reasonable at all. So it's a messy world. And yeah, it's a messy world. And in this episode, it really kind of acknowledges that.
We'll definitely have a lot to say about that in a later episode, and I know you guys know what I'm talking about, so we'll definitely discuss that issue there. So I do want to continue here.
I want to add on that, like, I think that this is some of the reason why I think Hermann was justified in demoting Lauren, because her actions as a police officer are important, and if she does the wrong thing, then she does deserve a serious consequence. Because it's more than reputation, it's about responsibility, power that you wield as someone who is supposed to protect the community, because your power is privilege, and if you don't use that privilege right, then you end up hurting a lot of people.
Oh yeah. I agree with that.
So Hadzy, if you want to finish up this section.
Okay, and after that, Will notices and says, "You seem quite fond of that music box, aren't why?" And Kym interrupts him, well, because she claps her hands and she says, "We should really go back to the precinct." And it's like she's purposely dodging the question, and she says, "They're probably waiting for our depositions, and infuriating Hermann is really not on my bucket list this morning." And then once they say that, Lauren waves to them with their coats, and we have this panel of all the three of them with small smiles, and it transitions to the next scene.
Yeah, I love that.
I didn't even realize that she was bringing their coats out for them. That's very sweet.
I know,
Yes.
like I love those two panels. It's so cute. Like
And
it's a wholesome moment.
yes,
And
it is.
it's also at this point it's like December or at least late November, so she's thinking and she's watching out for her friends.
Yeah.
Plot wise, I'm filing away the detail that there's a music box in her life and that she doesn't want to talk about the melody or the music box or something. So it's like, keep in mind what,
and especially
what it's about.
Oh yeah, and especially with the talk of like, you know, kind of these themes of growing up and recognizing like, you know, the grayness of the world and recognizing your own morality within inside that. You also have to mention the moments in episode 18 where Kym was thinking about these timestamps and these dates that were right after the Allendale train station bombing. So something like Lauren, something probably happened to her around that time.
And so, like, if it was right after that point, you can pinpoint that she would have been very young. In fact, I think it would be 11. So, yeah, a wee lass.
Okay, so now the next scene is we have the bridge, and it looks like it's dusk time. And we see Lauren and Kieran from the back wearing coats, walking over the bridge, walking together. It's cold. Their breaths are causing, you know, vaporation, whatever it's called, condensation, sublimation, something. So
Air clouds.
Yes. And she has clearly just told him about the death of Harvey, because he says, "Golden Viper, you say?" And she says, "Yes, the forensic unit was quite positive about that." And he says, "I see." Pause. "Well, that's quite unusual." And he's looking off in the distance. And he says, "And expensive, whatever the message the killer wanted to send." And Lauren is just, she has this snarl on her face, and she says, "I wish I could find the assassin who did this to Harvey and send him to rot in jail." First of all, she assumes it's a male, okay? but she is angry. She's very angry. And Lauren is usually not so emotional, but you can see that this is affecting her. She's upset. And Kieran looks over at her at this moment, and then he looks away and his face is in the shadows. And to me, that is, he's clearly thinking about, well, he says it in a second. He says, I could have been the one to kill Harvey, you know that? Because he knows that that's his job. It's an assassin. And he, we can guess, honestly, without knowing what we know, we can guess that he knows something about this assassin because it's a Phantom Scythe assassin, presumably, and he's a Phantom Scythe member. So, he's looking at the face that Lauren makes and the anger and disgust and the hatred that is in her eyes, and he knows that could have been him and that could have been leveled at him. And that's obviously his major conflict, right? That Lauren is so far the only person that we know of that doesn't view him with complete anger and hatred. She has, started to see some positive sides in him.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like also like what she said there, I feel like that might be a sore spot for him because like she says this about this assassin because he killed her friend, but you could also say a lot of people think that about him.
Yeah.
Like he has probably many people who loved ones he's killed where they think the exact same thing.
And in a sense, this is very hypocritical for Lauren to say, because while she does have the right to be mad, she has the right to be upset, because after all, this was one of her co-workers that works in the same office. They seemed to have like a good relationship with each other, but what she's saying here is very hypocritical, because despite like saying that what assassins are doing are morally wrong and they should rot in jail, she's still working with Kieran.
Yeah.
Because
And this is very hypocritical.
Yeah,
I
and
was gonna say it's hypocritical, but then Hadzy said it. But yeah, Lauren only really cares when it affects her, and so far Kieran hasn't killed anyone that would be like really important to her, so she has no motive to be mad at him. But her reality right now with Harvey is the reality of hundreds of people, and there are hundreds of people who have lost family members and friends to the purple hyacinth, and yet she does not express anger or remorse on their behalf, even though she is working with their loved one's murderer. And she doesn't care because having Kieran around benefits her and her own motivations for taking down the Phantom Scythe. So she is willing to turn a blind eye, but only when it benefits her.
Mm-hmm.
Right. She obviously did care. Like, she didn't like just hop, run, and skip to make the deal with him. Like, it did cost her a lot. But yeah, she definitely is choosing to squash that down.
Yeah, and it's the moral dilemma.
In a sense, she's also like, she has a really narrow sight of the world. Like she's seen, so I feel like she acknowledges that like the world itself is in a sense like morally great. I think she acknowledges that, but she fails to notice that the morally grayness of the world is really right next to her.
Yeah.
Or it's around her, and it's even in her own actions.
Yeah, Lauren herself, I feel like, is a very black and white person. Like, I think she acknowledges the world can have gray areas, but I don't think she sees the gray areas in people. I think she sees it as very, like, straight, like, you're either bad or you're good, and that's all there is to it. And it's, like you said, very narrow viewpoint to have.
I would even say that, like, coming out of Kym's point of view, where she has had that moment of like, there is a lot of gray in this world compared to Lauren's like, still very black and white view. It kind of shows how a difference between the two, where Kym has sort of grown up in this sense, whereas Lauren hasn't.
Mhm.
I'm excited that the story takes on this theme. I think it's a fantastic theme for the story to show us, changing. So now Kieran asks her, he says, what would you have done? And, if he had been the one to kill Harvey? And she looks down for a second, ponders, thinks about it. And Kieran's looking at her intently, like waiting for her answer. It looks like a lot of his emotions are hinged on her answer. And she has this, again, her very angry look on her face. And she says, I would have killed you. Ugh. And Kieran bursts out laughing. And he's like, he laughs and he says, at least you're clear, officer. Because, Kieran, yes, while I personally think he's sensitive, he also has developed a very, very, very strong wall. And he does appreciate, novelty and honesty and something unique. And he genuinely appreciates it. So he says, at least you're clear. I suppose I wouldn't expect less of you. So
and Kieran himself acknowledges that what he's doing is really wrong. Morally wrong. It's definitely not the best thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so he's not surprised about Lauren's response, and he knows her personality at this point. He knows that if he ever associates her, if his job as an assassin associates with her in any way, she would have killed him.
Yeah, and I find it interesting that this is one of the few questions he's ever asked her where he was deadly, not deadly serious, but there was no humor in his question. It was because usually he'll be serious, but he has a hint of humor to it where he's he doesn't care about the answer really. This one he was he was hinging on her answer. He was just waiting for it.
yeah, I love seeing people being serious. So
Yeah.
I love it. And now Lauren stops and she kind of looks down and fidgets with her fingers because she's about to kind of ask him for a favor, and Lauren doesn't do that easily. And she says, do you have any idea who it could be? And Kieran kind of looks away, says, I have my suspicions, although I'm not sure of anything. And he looks at her and says, I can find the person who did it for you. He is giving her an offering. He is going to do her a favor all on his own. Oh, and she looks shocked at him, very shocked, and a little childish here too. It's an unguarded expression. And then she smiles. She has her nose is red because it's cold outside.
First genuine smile she's given him.
A real smile. She appreciates.
This is the first moment when I read this chapter for the first time. This was the first moment where I'm just genuine emotion. I love that.
See that, finally a non-aggressive, abrasive interaction between them.
Or not something dripped in sarcasm.
Right. But Kieran immediately, moves on, and he's like, however, and he has this cute face. He's like, we have much more pressing matters we need to talk about tonight. Flemmings will be back in town in 2 days, and we better start planning our little infiltration. Lauren asked, do we have enough time to build a file on him? Nope. And somehow I have a feeling we shouldn't neutralize him yet. I want to learn more about him before moving against them. He could be useful later. And then Lauren's like, so when you said I had to dress up, you meant she has this anxious look on her face. He's like, yep, I borrowed one of their uniforms a few hours ago, borrowed in quotations. And he holds out the bag to her and he takes it out and he's like, and trust me. And he grins. And his focus is on just his little smirk. You are going to hate it. And then whoosh. And by the way, Fwoot, I thought it said Fwoot first. And I was like, wow, that's a nod to their favorite fan. But no, it says Fwoosh, but we could pretend it says Fwoot. And
literally every time I see Fwoosh, I'm like, hey, it's me. Because at one point I did have my name as Fwoosh as a joke because I would just do parodies of Fwoot because it would just get auto-corrected so many times. So
So he brandishes this outfit. Lauren has a shocked look on her face, and then she has a disgusted look on her face, and she says, what the? And that's what it is.
Oh.
Really, she does not like her outfit.
She doesn't like it at all.
R.I.P.
just
Lauren
love-
deserves better than this.
I just love the look of like glee, almost glee on his face at her misery. I love it.
We can expect no less from our sadist Kieran.
Of course.
So in 30 seconds or less, what are your final thoughts on this episode?
This episode is definitely one of my favorites. It was definitely one of those episodes that kind of kept me in, like helped me keep reading the whole series, because it focuses on, I personally really love the gray morality thingy when it comes to superheroes have their limits. It acknowledges reality at the same time, and I really like these character growths a lot, and I don't know, I just like seeing Kym talking about these things because, one, it's her honest opinion, and it definitely helped me get to know Kym better as a character.
Okay, I might get some slack for this, but I think this episode is like really overshadowed by the Loki shipping at the end, because when I hear people talk about this episode, I hear them talk about the last scene. I don't hear them talk about the Kiwi scene. And I think that's a really big shame, because the Kiwi scene is just so important and so beautifully written, and just their interactions and what Kym says and those whole themes. Like, we don't talk about that enough. That is like, that is some deep stuff right there. And yet people always focus on the like Loki shipping and like, oh, he did something for her, and oh, like she smiled at him. But like, y'all.
I think that's one of like the aspects of kind of ignoring the serious stuff for something more lighthearted, because I can understand
the themes into practice right now of just
because
escapism.
I can understand why some people might not like the first part of the episode where they talk about all that morality and stuff, because really when I recommended this to one of my friends, they were saying like, oh, but the Loki at the end, oh, and I just like, oh, just as like a person who loves philosophy, I'm just like, what did you think of the first part? Like the Kiwi part where they talked about the superheroes, and they're like, oh wait, I have to read it again, and it was really disappointing. But I think it's something that definitely should be acknowledged more, because it's a broad theme that is, one, interesting, and it's definitely tied into like our world, because and it is reality. There's no such thing as a superhero, really, and not anybody can be like not everybody good can be happy, and just because you're good doesn't mean that you can have like a good life, a good long life. It can always be cut short. It can happen really anytime. And this is what I really love about this episode, I think.
Yeah. I think what I like most about this episode is I like the genuine emotions of the characters, because most of the time they have a lot of walls that they have like masking their real emotions, but this is they broke them down to like their genuine feelings, and you can actually see it with Kym's thing about superheroes. It's you get an insight into her head, and it's these genuine moments with Kym and Will, and then you get Kieran and Lauren at the end, like him showing some genuine like kind of concern for what she thinks, and then her kind of giving him a genuine kind of smile and thank you sort of thing. It's all very nice to see some genuine emotion without the sarcasm and the humor.
And it's such a good Kim episode because a lot of the time she is characterized as like, watermelon and just raccoon and just comedic relief. And that is all people see her for. But she's so much deeper than that. And I'm so glad that this episode does exist because it really just explores an aspect of Kim that we don't get to see very often and reminds us that Kim isn't such a 2D person that a lot of people make her out to be. She is feeling and living, and she does have real emotions.
Yeah.
And
said.
she is in my opinion, she is like, I think like most of my friends just categorize her as like that one side character for comedic relief, like most of my RL friends. And I'm just like, okay, but you have to admit that she is definitely not a side character. She is, I mean, everybody is not exactly a side character because each character has their own emotions and they definitely have things that they hide from other people. There's no such person who doesn't have any secrets. There's no such person who's like so transparent that you could see like whatever they're feeling. There's always something that a person has to hide.
Indeed.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to this episode. Everyone's thoughts were fantastic. Yeah, I agree that this is a very, it's nice to see another side of the characters and especially like the Kiwi interaction and their vulnerability. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your wonderful thoughts.
Thank you for
Yes,
having us,
thank-
as always.
Thank you very
Yes,
much
thank
for
you.
having us.
Have a good night. Yeah.
All right. Bye, y'all.